Okay. Who's ready to talk about goals?
That's not you.
That is not me. No, I don't have the beard in that one. That's a little old. So, yeah, we're going to talk about, what's that?
You don't have the smile either.
Oh, I was mean mugging it that day. I don't know what's going on. These are not life goals that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Sitecore goals. So, Rich, this is not the session you're looking for.
Oh.
Quite honestly, it's too late for you anyway. But what are goals? So in Sitecore, really we're talking about, these are conversion goals, or what you can hear, so digital goals, or just simply goals. They're activities that the visitors can, or that you want to have them take on your website. I mean, it's really, really simple. And so how are goals used outside of Sitecore? Because if you're familiar with goals in any form, they're oftentimes used in some type of analytics tool like Google Analytics. They're also used in something like Google AdWords, but most of the time it's used as more purely reporting, right? So where it differs in Sitecore is that Sitecore actually takes that information and it makes it actionable, okay? So in analytics, you can set up your goals like a purchase or something like that, or downloading a white paper or whatever, and then get reports based on that. And then there's a whole conversion section that you can go in and dig into those goals and what people are triggering off of, and kind of how the goal is flows throughout your site. So how a user kind of comes into that and where they go to the other places from that trigger. But then also in AdWords, so sometimes people use what's called a smart bidding strategy when they're buying digital advertising. And this is just an example of one, the bid strategy for target ROAS, or return on ad spend. And what that means is that AdWords is going to take all that information from conversion history inside of AdWords and make decisions to be able to go to that auction and buy based on a percentage that you put inside of that return on ad spend box. Okay, so there are good purposes of goals outside of Sitecore, and you definitely, when you go in and create those goals, you'll use them for other things. But today we're just going to talk about what we're doing in Sitecore. So here are some examples. You may be thinking, like, what are examples of goals? I know for a couple of you guys, we definitely have gone through this process. But so if there's anything that I'm talking this, you've been through that process before, you want to share, please do. So here's what we call an engagement value scale. And I'll get into this in a second, but on the left-hand side are examples of digital goals. So on the top left-hand side, we have request call, request pricing, request for white paper. These familiar to you guys? Some of these types of things, okay? So these are things that either the person that's on the site want to do, or things that you've designated that I need them to do in order for you to get value out of that transaction. Okay? So how are goals used inside of Sitecore? Like I said, Sitecore uses goals in an actionable way. They can be used to create personalization rules, right? So an example of this is if you have a page that you want someone to land on, and they achieve that, and you set that up as a goal, and they achieve that goal. Maybe it's a section of your site. They go into that section that's different, maybe in a type of category than another section of your site. Oh, that triggers Sitecore and says, now I'm going to personalize based on that goal that was triggered. And you could serve up different content for those people because they're maybe interested in that type of content versus another section in your site, right? So that's a very common one. You can also create an engagement plan based on that goal trigger. So who's used engagement plans before? Okay, a little bit. All right, so engagement plans, basically it's kind of like marketing automation a little bit, where I can set up a series of steps, and based on the information that Sitecore gets, whether it's time delay, like if they hit a site and it's maybe, there's a particular time that you set for it to trigger off of, or if they hit certain pages, right? So you can set up an engagement plan that will automatically put them into either a drip campaign, or after they make that action, like a purchase or a request for a quote, there is an engagement plan that will continue after that. So that kind of thing can be triggered off of a goal that, that is set up. And then lastly, I mean, there's other things, but commonly just measuring, that. And so getting into experience analytics, getting into the path analyzer on 8.2, Sitecore 8.2, the path analyzer has just a phenomenal, it's been phenomenally upgraded. So the path analyzer has goal funnels where I can actually get in, kind of like Google Analytics, but I can get in and see the path of how they got to trigger that goal. Right? And that's very important because you want to replicate that process as much as you can. So what happened before they triggered it and what happens afterwards, and you can kind of dig in directly into that. So that's a really cool way of doing that. So some basics on goals. You may come across the term events in Sitecore. Well, there's actually 3 of these. Basically, goals are events. There's 3 types of events: goals, events, and failure actions. And the way that Sitecore uses these are a little bit different. And they're mainly for reporting, but also in the triggering component when you talk about engagement plans and personalization. So Sitecore treats goals just like events and other things, but events are actually the things that you just want to capture as things that, oh, that's an event that happened on my website. A goal, however, is something that you want or they want to have happen on your website. Does that make sense? So the way that it's captured is very similar, but in the analytics reports, you'll actually see a section for those conversions, those goal conversions in there, and it won't be set up there for events. And then lastly, failure actions, so 404. That's something that if someone hits your 404 page, I can easily go to that 404 page in Sitecore and go down to the section where I can go up to Analyze in the tab and then choose actions, and I can go to failure actions and make sure that when someone lands on that 404 page, it's registered in reports as a failure action. And so that's just another way for you to, as a marketer or content author or anybody, to see that people are actually hitting a page, they're failing somewhere, and it's actually, and you can correct it, right? That's an important part. All right. Last, it was actually in June, we talked about the Context Marketing Personalization Planner. You guys remember this? Were you there, Jude? No? All right. I'm going to send this to you. It's good. So the Context Marketing Personalization Planner, we talked about, this is mostly to do with personalization, but the steps to achieve capturing goals are definitely appropriate, especially in these first 2 steps, okay? So what we're going to talk about today is going to be more in the step 1 and 2 here. So within step 2, the process of engagement evaluation right here, that we didn't get too much deep in, well, how do you actually achieve this? We said you need to do step 1, we need to do step 2, but within here, there's actually a process that we go through in order to achieve how you map what are high value goals, what are medium value goals, and what are low value goals. But number 1 is extremely important in that equation as well. So the process that we go through is a very simple plan, organize, deploy, and report. And of course, I'll get into that in just a second. So if you're going for if you're capturing goals beyond personalization, you're still going to, whether you're doing just personalization or you're doing goal capturing again for putting people in engagement plans or just reporting, you're still going to follow the same process of capturing it. Because ultimately what we're going to come up with is that pyramid with all the high value, medium value, and low value goals outside of Sitecore. And then we'll jump into, how do you actually put these into Sitecore and then go through that process. All right, so in planning, we go through, everybody should have a familiarity again with, the types of organizational goals and objectives that you have. And so if you don't know that, please get familiar with that. Obviously these things like site URL and business model, you probably already know that really, really well. Primary business objective. Spend some time to actually come up with, first, come up with a single business objective for whatever section of your site or what site you're working on. come up with the most important business objective. If it is to increase appointments, or if it's to increase the amount of quotes that we're getting online, or it could even get to like increasing the amount of applicants we get through the through the career process. All that kind of stuff are great objectives. They're very common objectives, but make sure you have it documented, right? And then last here is define your CX maturity. This is customer experience maturity. Sitecore has a maturity assessment out there. I think both of you have you guys all gone through that customer maturity assessment? So the connecttheexperience.com/CX-maturity-assessment. It takes 15 to 20 minutes to take, but it will define where you sit in that maturity. And it's going to give you a lot of great information about where you go from where you're at and what you need to do to get there. So we just simply figure out, you guys take the test, we go in and plop you on, Sitecore plops you on the thing here, and then we know that say you're in Align or Optimize. Then you go through and what is your desire for hitting in the next 12 months, basically. Where do you want to go from there? And usually what we try to do is just go one up, because there's a lot of work in just getting to the next step, right? So the next step usually includes a lot of organizational readiness, process changes. It's jumping into additional technologies like email and personalization and things like that. So there's a lot of work just in jumping one, and it freaks your bosses out a lot less if you just do that instead of trying to go all the way to lifetime, which is very costly from the beginning anyway. So anyway, go through this process, because this is what's going to put you in the right mindset for creating those goals. We get into a lot of these conversations with clients, and oftentimes there's different groups will come in and say, well, this is our most important objective, and another group, this is our most important objective. And we take that opportunity to kind of plot those out and prioritize those, but it seems like they don't all understand or are on the same page, with what their business objectives are, right? And so we just dealt with one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We just got back last week, and it was interesting because it's kind of a back and forth for about an hour on a very simple thing. Do we want this to be a lead gen site, or do we want this to be a brochureware site? And they were pretty evenly split. And it was one of those, kind of aha moments where you try to step back a little bit. What's our objective for even having this site, right? These are all things that should happen outside of the boardroom or happen outside of these conference rooms, right? But a lot of times they don't even think about it until you get into a discussion like this, right? And so this is a way to kind of get them all together, iron out some really important details, and then get everybody in the right mindset. And once we actually broke through and everybody was on the same page as this is actually a lead gen site, all of our goals, digital goals that we defined, actually changed. All the valuations and prioritizations of those actually just changed completely. So it's pretty phenomenal. So the next step here is, once we have a really good frame of mind, we go on to step 2, which is lining up all those goals, and we actually have a process to go through to get there. The process that we use 2 different varying processes. One is just a very kind of an informal. We try to do the step 1 kind of setup, and these are great for small groups. These are usually small groups, not a whole lot of product marketing teams. A single engagement value scale, the pyramid that we were looking at. When you get into larger groups, you're going to do something what we call as a KJ method, or it's kind of often known as affinity diagramming. And so those are great for large groups. The whiteboard discussion is perfectly fine, and typically what we end up doing with small groups is just kind of putting this up on the board, and then just making a big old long list of all those digital goals. And they'll go through several variations of that pyramid, but we'll come up with one single one typically for smaller groups, and that's fine. But for large groups, what we do in the KJ method is really we get stacks of sticky notes, right? Have you guys gone through like a grouping exercise with sticky notes before? So you basically write, so the product teams oftentimes will be the ones that, they may be 3, 4, 5 product lines, and they all have ownership over those product lines, and they have their own kind of version of truth, right? And so it's good to give them a stack of sticky notes, right, and let them write all of what they think the digital goals are on those sticky notes. And what we're going to do is basically just get them all out onto a table and start to group them. The next step, after everybody writes all their ideas down, then you group them together. And then once they're all grouped together in kind of categories, logical groupings, then we take that and then redistribute to everybody, and basically they're going to get different ones, and they're going to come back and all have a single version of what all those categories are, right? And when that happens, you're going to get, you may get a single engagement value scale, or you may get 2 or 3 engagement value scales, but then you're going to have, the groupings will turn into the high, mediums, and lows in that engagement value scale. So that's very beneficial for larger teams. Okay, so what we typically do is prioritize based on a 0 to 100 arbitrary scale. It could be 0 to 10. It doesn't really matter what that number system is. But we take those, and then again, we put numbers to each of those goals. So if it's request a call or request a quote, or purchase a product, whatever it is, we put a number on that. So 100 is the most important thing, and then 0 is obviously the least important thing. You'd be surprised on how many people will put 100 on things that absolutely has no conversion value for the business. Things like watching a video. Just because you want them to watch a video does not make it 100 points, right? And so that was part of this discussion that we had recently. And so, that kind of thing is a very good process to go through. So basically after that, once you put the 0 to 100, then you go into group those into high, medium, and lows. Again, going back to this slide, the highs are going to be something that traditionally puts money in your bank, right? It actually provides conversion value for your organization. If it's not just putting money in the bank, maybe it's for philanthropy, or you want to drive careers, or these kind of things in your business. Those could absolutely be very, very high, or the highest in your business. That's why step 1 is so important, right? A call directly into someone in the call center or whatever, we realize, and there's usually data to back this up, that they convert maybe that person 70% of the time if they even get them on the call, right? And so that is really beneficial information to come into this discussion with. Request pricing, that's probably an online transaction instead of a offline transaction that starts from online. And so if it's online, there's no commitment there. They actually haven't picked up the phone, they haven't talked to somebody, they have no chance of, very little chance of, getting a high conversion rate on that. And so, 50 is probably good enough for that. And it just goes down from there. So in that KJ method, or whatever system that you determine, we put these in high, medium, low. Does that all make sense? All right, Sitecore time. So then we take that, we take all that, and when we have the pyramids built out, then we have a really clear set of actionable goals that we can load up into Sitecore. And so the place that we go, I'm just going to probably have to log in again here, which is fine. Put this all on one screen. Habitat. Yep. There we go. It's fine. I'll leave. Stop. All right. Log into Sitecore here. I'm just in a demo habitat site. So it's 8.2, right? 8.2? Yeah.
Latest 170614.
Nice. Thank you. Did I hear a nerd talking? Was it a niner?
Up to 4.
All right, I'm going to go over into desktop. All right, so who has been in the marketing control panel before? Okay. All right, so really the marketing control panel is where you're going to start setting up all of your goals. So there's two places I'm going to really kind of go between. The marketing control panel, that's how you organize and actually deploy all of your goals, right? And then you have to go into either the page that you want to trigger the goal off of, go into the form that you want that to trigger. So I can actually have, when someone submits a form, that save action on the form submission could trigger a goal as well. So those are a couple places. Or I can go into, and there's a module for this called the SBOSS accelerators that's available in the marketplace, but sometimes you can actually use external links as triggers as well. That's a little, I don't think it's perfect right now because it requires it requires structured content in order to serve the, inside of the content editor. You'll see structured content on the right-hand side, right, when you're going to fill out that page form. It has to have a box for the external link or the URL there instead of just using an external link in the rich text editor. But there are ways to trigger a goal off of an external link or any internal link inside of the rich text editor using Ajax. So that's something where you have to usually go to a developer and say, hey, I need this to kind of, be triggered. But there's some little finessing to that as well. So we're going to go through a standard just page view type of trigger, okay? So in the marketing control panel, on the left-hand side, there's a couple places that you'll need to look. The first one's goals, right? So if we expand goals, there's all these out-of-the-box types of goals. These are great. These are fine. But what I like to do is usually get rid of all the standard ones, most of them anyway. And so because we don't use a lot of these. So I'll go in and set up some folders. I've set up folders for external links and page views here. So what I'm going to do is go down here, and this is really easy if you just go to goals and right click that and go to insert. There's goal categories. This is just there for organizational purposes. So if you have different types of goals, like these are my set of purchase goals, right? So purchase could have been at the 100 points up here, right? But there could be 3 or 4 different goals that need to be triggered along that purchase path. So that's a good idea to put a goal category folder in there to kind of say, oh, this is all my purchase path goals, right? So that's really easy. Other than we'll go into page goals page view goals, because these are basic goals that whenever someone visits a particular page, it will trigger this goal. And so if I just go into the category, hit insert, choose goal, I'm just going to name the goal, view homepage, just for the purposes of the demo. All right, so now what it's going to do, it created my goal, the right-hand side here, and the classification is something that it just depends on the way that you guys operate, really. Sometimes with classification, I instruct everyone to start using these goal facets. And I think it's really important to use goal facets, especially whenever you have a large set of goals that you're going to be categorizing or organizing. The goal facets, where they come in at is for reporting purposes. I can actually go in and see that these may be, how we did categories in these folders over here? Well, the categories don't show up in reporting or anything like that. These are just purely for the marketing team to go in or content team to go in and organize these sets of goals in the content tree. But these classifications actually do show up in the experience analytics reporting. So if I wanted to see how many page view types of goals, well, it's not going to report off of this folder. It's going to report off this goal facet that I can rename goal facet 1, because that's just the out of the box facet, to page view types or something like that, and I can actually get a report just for that goal facet. Okay, so these classifications are used for reporting. These are strictly for organization. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so going down here, I'm just going to go to the data section here. And data is where I actually put that value that I have come up with in this process here. Okay, so if I want it to trigger a page view, you know, they're going to the home page all the time, right? So I could put 0 or I could put 1 or 2 or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? I can put those points, so I'm just going to put 2 and save it. Not the page, not the page, and control save. There we go, save it. And down here, if I wanted to put, this category field is just an open-ended field. So this is where it kind of gets confusing. You put goal facets, right? Goal facets are used in analytics. This category field here, I can actually use that in a free-form fashion. So if there's certain like tags or things that you want to put in here as far as you know, what type of goal this is. I typically don't use this, but it's just a free-form type of thing that you can use if you want. Down here, if you want to put a description, you can put a description of that goal, like when someone hits the home page, it triggers this, or you know, if this is a multi-step type of thing, you know, you put the description in there. So basically, this is ready to go as far as it's set up for me to put on the home page. Okay, so again, going back, there is a two-step process here. You have to create the goal in the marketing control panel, and then you have to tag an item in the content tree with that goal in order for it to be triggered. Okay? So just because you put all the goals into the goals list here in the marketing control panel does not mean you have goals activated. It just means you have them ready to trigger. And so basically, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but in the rules section here, the rules actually, I can define a lot of rules in order for that to be triggered. And so the rule's evaluated when the page event is triggered. See, the word event is being used here again because event is a type of, goal is a type of event here. But when you hit edit rule, it's going to bring up the rule set editor. You're going to have choices like, you know, it could be from a particular IP address is a good example of this. You may want to only trigger people coming from a different GeoIP when they hit the home page than everybody else in the population, right? That's actually a good goal. Like, oh shoot, my competitor is in Parsippany, New Jersey. I have no idea why I chose Parsippany, New Jersey. I've never even been to Parsippany, New Jersey. But maybe you have a GeoIP set up for just that, and then when they hit the home page, you trigger a goal, and then you have a personalization rule set up to trigger based on that goal that's triggered. Hey, competitor, thanks for visiting my site today. What are you looking for? We've actually done that. So it's kind of cool. But anyway, so that could be something that you use as a rule to that event triggering, and not every single time. You don't want it to trigger every single time someone hits the home page. So now my goal is set up. I'm going to go out to the content editor right here. I've got 4 minutes. And open up my home page, and then go up into the Analyze tab, and then choose Goals. Okay? And then in here, I didn't deploy it. So this is my problem. This is a problem that I just created for myself. So I'm going to go back into here in Marketing Control Panel, and go up here to, I believe it's Review, and go to Deploy. That way it's available throughout the system. And why that's important is not just in the content editor. It's also because it actually goes down into Experience Analytics and updates all the fields so that it knows whenever you know, when it gets updated, it's going to go back through and see, oh, you know, there's actually been a lot of people from that IP address hitting the home page. I'm going to go in and create the report for that. And so once this finishes up, this is pretty cool stuff. It is. If that doesn't, if it works. Yeah, let's see if it worked. Deploying is not my friend today. Let's move to a different workflow state. Okay, cool. So that's fine. Let me go back into Content Editor and refresh. Go into Home. Analyze, please be there. View home page, it's at the bottom, okay? So now, if I hit OK, now every single time because I didn't put any rules in there, every single time someone hits the home page, it's going to put 2 points onto that session, okay? And whenever they close that session, it'll actually record instead of just when you hit the home page, all right? So now I'm going to go in and publish the home page just with simple publishing. Please don't hang on me.
Is the recording mechanism JavaScript or is it all server-side?
I believe it's JavaScript.
The recording mechanism, you said?
Yeah.
I believe it is.
Yeah. Not running. Please contact your system administrator. Okay, great. Awesome. Why can't you publish? So this habitat it looks a little bit different. Yeah, the publishing service. So we'll have to turn on the publishing service. So theoretically that works. We're going to go into actually the experience analytics, and I'll show you where you actually pull some of those reports out at. Hopefully that.
Are you all familiar with the publishing service?
When it works. Yeah.
When it works, yeah. I know that Marco actually just put that up there.
Yeah.
Okay. So experience analytics, you guys familiar with experience analytics? You're not yet. Not yet. You're going to get there. Left-hand side here, go to conversions. Overview, you're going to have some very basic visits. 1, right? Visits. I'm going to scroll down here, right? Value per visit. So this recorded a trigger. Let's see. That was actually 2 days ago. Was that right? 2 days ago. So this report's a little behind because I just deployed that. But if I go over here into goals, you can expand that. Go to goal facets. That's that special report that's set up for all those goal facets. So if you wanted to organize all those together and group them into like purchase flow or careers or something like that, there's a special place for goal facets. But here, just on the goals landing page, it's going to have out of the box reports here for your goals. Top goals, there's top goals, top goal by value per visit, and then a list of all the goals here. And so if we were to hit the home page, we basically would just get and close out the session. About 15 minutes or so is typically kind of how long that takes. It will report in your list of goals. And then obviously with the top goals section, once a lot of those start generating, you're going to get those bubbled up. The ones that are 100 are going to obviously bubble up to the top. I can take that and figure out who that session belongs to and go and see why that person is getting 100 points. And then go and see what additional things, maybe even if it's something that consistently hits 50, then I can go into that person and figure out how do I get them to 100, right? So it's very powerful stuff of seeing how valuable a person is to your organization through your digital channels, right? Another condition that we may put into that rule set editor is if they've come from social sites, right? Then trigger the goal. If they've come from entering a particular keyword into Google, then trigger that. If they used a branded keyword, trigger. Those are kind of things that we typically see in triggering those goals. Very, very, very powerful stuff because you can see the individual whenever they capture enough data and figure out, how can I get them from 25 points to 100 points? It's good stuff. I'm going to stop it here. Is there any questions? No? All right.
So many questions.
So many questions. All right. Thanks, everybody.